very excited to talk to three of the wisest men in Bitcoin. And
Where?
And you can tell, not because of how they look, but because of what they say. And that's what we're going to dive into today. A little bit because of how they look. I was actually in Montreal with Larry a few months ago, and he was on stage, quoted as saying that there are effing fossils in the room.
Did I say that?
I don't know. It doesn't sound like you very much, does it? But no, okay. So for today, what I want to do is really dive into selfishly what my generation. I'm a millennial, and now the Gen Z generation coming up. The world's going to look super different when we are your age, 30, 40 years from now. And what I want to do is explore different ideas that you guys have experienced. And obviously, you all understanding Bitcoin, you've got the bright edge on you. And so the first question that I kind of want to dive into today, and I'll maybe start with you, Bob, and then work our way down, is what's something that you know today that you maybe wish you would have known or maybe even acted on in your 30s, in your 20s and 30s? You know, how can we see into the future and then learn from the experience?
Yeah, I think it's a very, very broad question, right? But I would say don't sweat the small stuff. You know, I spent a lot of time worrying about things that really weren't very important, and trying to keep my eyes focused on the bigger things and the end goal. Also got kind of work-life balance messed up at several points in my life. So
which kind of contradicts what some people, the hustle culture, I gotta stack sats at all costs. I gotta, all this stuff. And you're maybe suggesting, hey, relax.
Relax. Yeah, exactly.
Larry, what do you think?
Well, that's a tough one. I think probably I would say focus on the long-term trends. Don't worry about the short-term zigzags. It's very easy to get caught up in the emotion of the moment and what seems to be important at any point in time. And it's going to look like a blip in the long run. And so, even like, for example, all this turmoil, this geopolitical turmoil, it'll all go away. I mean, it'll get solved. And the long-term signal is that Bitcoin is money. And, by putting yourself in the position of being a Bitcoiner, you're going to be way ahead of the entire game. I mean, I saw Microsoft when it was getting started, and I talked about it in the book. I bought it, and I sold it too early, not really understanding just how long it takes for a major trend to manifest itself. And, Bitcoin is a major trend, and we're still in the very, very early days. And so I think I would, just say stay the course on the major trends. Don't let the little zigzags throw you off course.
What do you think you did that helped you identify Microsoft early on, and then now with the history of that, seeing Bitcoin, how can we learn from that?
Well, it's the same pattern. It was pattern recognition. I mean, I think all good investors are good at pattern recognition, and the names change and the stories change and everything else, but you can look at the characteristics. And my book talked about it, how networks are really the biggest change in the investing world in the last 200 years. Before networks got invented, there was never any business that grew with the kind of value creation that the networks business grew with. I mean, if you look at, Ford Motor Company or Procter & Gamble or any of the great Nabisco, any of the great businesses, they would all grow in value over time, but it was all linear. And when network businesses came around, and there was some of it before, Bitcoin, and the internet, but the closest thing maybe to it was the Yellow Pages or something. But network businesses grow in value at the square of the number of users, and so when you get something that's adopted in a network sense, the value creation is it's stunning. And so the PC, we didn't know it at the time, but it became a network business. Once one person had one, everyone had to have one, and then the internet, of course, connected them all. It was clearly a network business. And then Bitcoin is clearly the network of money business. So, I think that's the trend. That's the investing trend that they didn't teach me at Harvard Business School, right? And so I was looking at, the old metrics, and I almost missed the new metrics. And I did miss the new metrics with Microsoft, right. but I fixed it with Bitcoin.
So do you think then, you started with PCs, you started with internet, and then you had to Bitcoin. Is there going to be others? Is there something like?
Oh, I'm sure there will be. I mean, there'll probably be AI and agentic networks and all kinds of other new
But
things.
would you suggest selling your Bitcoin in order to invest in those things, or is Bitcoin the supreme? Yeah.
Well, not from a monetary point of view. There'll never be another Bitcoin. Bitcoin will be the form of money that we all use in 50 years. But yeah, I mean, if you're interested in growing a business and you need your capital out of your Bitcoin to do it, fine. I mean, that's a different bet. I'm just saying in general, I wish I'd understood network businesses more thoroughly when I was younger.
One thing I'll add, and I know it's a little off topic, is that I think it's important to look at those. Larry identified them. The personal computer and the internet, I think, are the most important ones when we're trying to look at how Bitcoin moves through this. The way at which adoption happens, the changes in the user sets, those sort of things, I think, are really important. And as a guy who came out of the personal computer industry, I can see that very, very clearly that, we're evolving. And there's growth pains that go with it. There's a great book I recommend a lot called Crossing the Chasm. It applies to companies and it applies to industries. And we're doing that as an industry. And so, for instance, I was just chatting with Matt from Start Mine 9 right before I came up. And I think, for instance, what they're doing is fundamental to the adoption. It's very similar to what the PC had to do to move from kind of being a tool that was used by engineers and geeks and hackers to something that went into bedrooms of 8-year-olds. Like that was a big transition, and it requires building products that create that accessibility.
BitBlockBoom started because we were outsiders and we needed a place that felt like home. Stockyards were always a place for people who didn't fit in. Let's go take a look at the cow town. Put on your hat. Let's go. Stockyards weren't just a cattle town. It was a place for cattlemen, traders, outlaws, and gamblers, people that were building something new. And that sounded familiar. Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid were known to spend time here, and Bonnie and Clyde stayed right here in the Stockyard Hotel. Hotels were great, but they're too normal, and Bitcoin is anything but normal. So we moved BitBlockBoom to a place with some edge and some history. They still run Longhorn Steer down this street every day, just like they did 100 years ago. And BitBlockBoom, well, it's just a few steps away. This is Mule Alley. This is where relationships are made. Bars, restaurants, rodeos, hangouts. Mule Alley is the place to come when the BitBlockBoom day is done. BitBlockBoom was built for people who didn't have a home, and the same thing applies to the Stockyards. Seems like we finally found a home. See you at the Stockyards.
Oh, looks like Larry's got something to say.
Oh, I completely agree. Let's go
Go
to
ahead,
George.
George. What do you think?
The original question was, what would I, if I were a younger George and I was talking to myself today and looking out across the audience, what I would say to you is to understand the nature of time. Time is finite. And, they call us the boomers, but the bottom line is we're on our final blocks here, many of us. And someday, you will be in the same position, especially if you're a lot younger than us. You will be facing those final blocks. And what I wish I had understood at the time when I was a younger man is to realize that the things that I felt were important really had no meaning in this world that I live in now. So many of us are focused on Bitcoin, and we're hyper-focused to the point that we've sacrificed relationships. Sometimes we've sacrificed our mental health if we've been stressed out. Every financial advisor will tell you that if you're laying there awake like I was back in 22 and 23 and you're staring at the ceiling, it means that you are overexposed. And they will tell you your option is to reduce your exposure or to understand the asset in a different way. So what I would say to you today is someday you'll be sitting here. Maybe you're already someone who's advanced holding Bitcoin, and you should be looking around and wondering what your life is about. And at the end of it, what the relationships were that you held close to you, what you left behind in not just your work, but who you were as a human being. And of all the things that I wish I could do over, or my regrets, they all come from not understanding the importance of that concept. Who you are as a man or a woman, but for me as a man, to do the right things, strength, honor, integrity, kindness. Those are the things that really matter. Not how much Bitcoin you have at the end of your life. When you leave here, you're going to take none of it with you. No Bitcoin crosses with you. You are alone. So I wish I'd have thought of that more.
Bunch of low time preference coming out of all you guys up here. I think that's such a good sentiment. This idea that Bitcoin needs to be looked at as a tool for what it can add to our life, not as the end result for our life. And I agree. I think that's a huge mistake that I see online, anyways. Is this concept or this idea that just acquiring Bitcoin is the end all be all, where really we need to understand, what do I want to do with that Bitcoin while we're there? And one thing that I feel like I've been enlightened, all this Bitcoin knowledge. You find Bitcoin and then you start learning about all kinds of other stuff and realize how your life has to change, not necessarily because of Bitcoin, but because of the things that you learned with Bitcoin. What do you think you see this, next generation doing actively right now that you're just like, you idiots, you got to change this habit right now, change this action right now in order to be successful and be happier when you're older? You want to start, Larry? Why don't you start?
Yeah, sure. Well, look, in general, I think most young Bitcoiners have their heads screwed on pretty straight, and I don't see them doing, lots of stupid stuff. But that's a generality. I think on an individual case basis, being on Twitter and watching people for, I don't know, the 10 years I've been on Twitter, and a lot of them much younger than me. Probably the biggest error I've seen repeatedly is the greed of, chasing a shit coin or leveraging your Bitcoin. I mean, there's just been heartbreaking stories of, people. I mean, I remember when Plan B told us it was going to 150 instantly, and some poor kid had one Bitcoin, which is an enormous amount. This is back when it was at 20,000 a coin or something, and he levered it up 4-to-1, and it moved around a little bit, and then bang, his coin was gone. And I was just like, oh man, you're just doing it wrong. Or more recently, another kid I saw on Twitter said, this Bitcoin thing is pissing me off. It's moving way too slow. I'm selling all my Bitcoin. I'm buying MetaPlanet. And when MetaPlanet was selling it at our MNAV of 8, and I was just like, what the hell are you doing? So that's probably the biggest error that I've seen young folks make, is just greed and not recognizing. I think everybody needs to really sit down with a compound calculator and understand what 10 or 15 or 20 or 30% a year does to you in terms of, the amount of wealth that you have.
Even 5 is not a bad number.
And I mean, it's insane. I mean, I think Warren Buffett put up the greatest investment track record in the history of investing, and I think his compound number was like 18 or 22. It was somewhere around there. And Bitcoin right now is compounding at 40% over a longer period, and that'll probably attrit down to 30%. But with no management team, no management risk, well, very little management risk. I guess core kind of counts as some risk, but with minimal management risk, you can get 30% a year. It's just a no-brainer. So that's the biggest one to me is don't be greedy. Just let time do its thing. Time is on your side.
Bob, do you have a different take?
Well, I'll reiterate that there is no shortcut. But one other maybe different angle on this is don't think the end goal is just to accumulate the Bitcoin. And I think that I have this thing of never retiring, because I actually tried it once 30 years ago. I tried to retire, and it didn't last more than 60 days because I realized there's you lose your sense of purpose in life. And you have to maintain your sense of purpose. So what you attain if you have a lot of Bitcoin, ultimately this whole thing plays out, is the ability to pursue your true purpose. And it's unlikely you'll find happiness drinking pina coladas at the beach or golfing every day, or those sort of things. It's not what it comes out to be. Purpose can be working for Habitat for Humanity, or opening your own business, or writing a book, or have something.
Have you gone through some type of framework or exercise? Like how would you suggest somebody, quote unquote, finds a purpose? I talk to so many people my age, stuck in kind of a deadbeat job, making a decent salary, but feeling petrified to leave, but then also unfulfilled throughout the day. How do you go find your purpose?
Well, I think if you have to achieve financial independence. So I think do what you have to do to achieve financial independence. And once you get there, this will sound very spiritual. I think you have to listen. You have to be aware that your purpose will come to you. By the way, for me, that sounds funny, as a guy later in life, Bitcoin became that purpose. So, in fact, short story, I had left the personal computer industry where I had done well, and I had done an angel investment firm, and I was just kind of meandering through life for about 10 years. And my wife will tell you, she said, I was losing my aura. That's the way she puts it. Like, I was losing my aura, just kind of fading. And it wasn't until 2017 when I got involved with Bitcoin that she says my aura returned, and because I had this sense of purpose. So I think it will come to you. You gotta tune in and
find
wait.
it and listen.
Yeah.
So I think we heard that Bob was the original aura farmer. That's what the kids call it now, aura farming. How about you, George?
I think right now, I won't say that there's anything that I'd offer advice for younger people, other than the fact to understand that, you are in a phase of the cycle right now where you have to endure. This is endurance pain, this cycle that you're in right now. We obviously are in a bear market. If you follow me, I'm really into metrics, a lot of on-chain analysis. Where I see this market right now is we're in a bear market. I thought it would last 2 to 7 months, and we're about 2 months in, so we still have pain to endure here. If you have somebody that that is young and that's in this space, as Larry mentioned, the worst thing you can do is to try and recapture or to somehow exaggerate the returns that you normally would return on an asset like Bitcoin. I mean, if you can't be happy getting 40% return and a CAGR of 40%, I don't know what the hell you're going to find out there that's going to mirror that. You might have had a chance with NVIDIA, but now that market, that's just a momentary blip. So if you have someone that's young, that's struggling, make sure they don't use leverage. None of this, trading on margin. Nothing that's going to expose them to possibly losing their Bitcoin, because this is hodl. And in fact, in the 60s, I was still trying to find ways to stack. So the market's changed, but that endurance pain, that's still there. That's what makes you a Bitcoiner. That's why you're sitting here right now. That's why you're attending a conference. You are a hardened son of a bitch. You got here because you believe in something and you're willing to hold it through just about anything. So I'm very hopeful for the future.
Yeah, that's good, man. We stack sats for our last name, right? We've got this, like Bob said, this purpose. We've got this incredible asset at our fingertips, and we seem to lose sight of the time preference at the end of the day. So on that note, I'll maybe flip it back to you, George, and then we'll kind of go down the rung here. I've got a young family, and I for context, George and I had the pleasure of recording a podcast this morning, so I got to hear a bit more about his life and his children and how he fathers, and it's amazing. It's something that I aspire to be like. And so, maybe just share, what are some of the things you're doing with the knowledge that we're going into what looks to be the fourth turning? We're going into chaos. How can we be preparing? How are you preparing your family? And how should we as Bitcoiners prepare our, non-Bitcoiner family members? I've got family. I've been doing this for 12 years, and I've still got family members that that don't buy into the magic internet money. How do you prepare them, despite their beliefs?
If you follow me, I've often said that I am a shitty orange pillar, that I just suck at it. And I don't know what it is, but, out of my 5 kids, I mean, I really haven't reached any of them. I've got one son-in-law that got it, and he got into about 20K, and he's very grateful today that he was listening to me. But, for some reason, that's an issue for me. It's a struggle. And so, if we are in a fourth turning, and I've said this before. In fact, you're sitting right now, you're right next to the Chisholm Trail. You know what this place is? It is the oldest cattle drive. It's the most famous cattle drive in all of the West. This is where people came after the Civil War, when they'd eaten everything on 4 legs. I mean, possums, anything that was walking on 4 legs, they'd eaten east of the Mississippi. Except here, there were longhorns, 5 times as many longhorns as people out here. And this is where people found out when they came from a fiat-destroyed world. They went through that. The Confederacy, their money was worth zero. The greenback was worth 50%. But when they came out here, what did they find? They found out what hard assets were. And they were on 4 hooves. They were longhorns. They were cattle. You can't print cattle. When you come to the realization that if we are in a fourth turning, you things that the governments of this world cannot print and cannot seize from you, that you can take as a sovereign individual across borders, settle at the speed of light. It's only one thing. It's Bitcoin. It is the thing that you need going forward to help you. And if you're like me and you suck at orange pilling, then you got to stand up and do what's right for the other people in your life. You got to stack for your kids. Someday they'll thank me. Hopefully. You got to do the right things in life. You got to protect the people you love, and if you've got friends, you try and help them out the best you can, especially as things get bad. So I would just say, again, just stay focused. Stay focused. I disagree with Saylor on some things. I'm sure you guys do too. But one of the things that I agree with him is his laser-like focus. So stay focused on the end game here, guys, and we'll be fine.
Yeah, I would say that, it's the younger generation today, and I look at my kids. I have 3 millennial kids, 20s and 30s. And, they live in a time, it's a blessing and a curse, right? I mean, we grew up in, the kind of the peaceful, and it wasn't entirely peaceful because we were afraid the Soviets were going to bomb us into the Stone Age. But we basically grew up in a peaceful time when we'd won World War II and America was growing, and it was the land of opportunity, and things were broken, but not the way they are now. And things are incredibly broken now, and it's going to require a new hero generation. And so, I say to my kids, look, the bad news is this really sucks, everything that's going on. The good news is there's going to be enormous opportunity for strong, intelligent people to rise up and fix this shit, right? And so, these guys, the Marty Bents and the Jack Mahlers of the world are going to be, the leaders of the new hero generation that's going to fix all this broken shit. And, you can complain about how broken it is, or you can pick up a shovel and start digging, and figure out how the fuck are we going to fix this stuff. It's, it's a goddamn mess, but, we can, we will fix it. We have to fix it. And for those who don't get it and don't understand the risks involved, I've got a new strategy, George. I hadn't told you about this. I'm now giving out copies of the Mandibles.
I love that book.
I'm not giving out my book anymore. They won't read it. I'm like, fuck this shit. You want to see how bad it is? How about when you have to put your daughter into a prostitution ring to raise money to pay the bills so you can eat? How about when people come and home invade you with a gun? I mean, and I'm not saying we're going to that kind of dystopian world, but it's an interesting thought experiment because things are really fucking broken, right? So, look, we all get dealt a set of cards when you come into this world, and, you got your 60 productive years or whatever to play those cards as best you can. And when you're our age, you're kind of looking at how you played them, and you say, well, some of it went well, and some, I have some real regrets. And, all I can say is, realize at a young age that you'll be here faster than you ever thought. Realize that, your integrity and being true to yourself is much more important than anything else. And then recognize that there are going to be a lot of, disappointments and hard things that you go through. but that actually all those things are a way of teaching you a lesson that once you learn it will make you a better person, and that when it's over, you'll feel proud and strong that you made it through that time, as opposed to if you just had some cushy life. I mean, imagine being a Donald Trump or a George Bush, or these guys who were born on third base and think they hit a triple. I mean, what the fuck? I mean, versus being somebody who's gritty, who grew up with nothing, who fucking figured it out because they didn't have a choice, right? I mean, that's what the human condition is all about. Is taking the shitty cards you're dealt and figuring out how to play them, right? So to me, I think it's like people criticize boomers because this world's all broken because of the boomers, and it is. And a lot of boomers are fucked up. Not me, but not these two guys. A lot of boomers are fucked up, but and our generation did a lot of shit wrong. On the other hand, the world we live in also was done by our generation, and guys like Bob created the PC, which changed the world. Or helped create the spread of the PC, which changed the world. So, look, you can't change your conditions, but you can change how you play the cards. Is kind of my view.
Like that.
Yeah. Well, there's not a lot for me to add. The only thing I'll say is I'm fortunate that all my direct family is orange pilled. So all 6 kids, all 7 grandkids. So
you're just rubbing it in, George.
Yeah, that just pisses me off.
Sorry, George. But the advice I give them, something I learned is like when I got out of school with my degree, engineering degree, I thought I had a vision of what I was going to be, and it was all kind of engineering related, and very quickly learned that wasn't the way it was. That I was involved in the PC market, just changing quickly. I had to change quickly. And so the advice I give my kids and my grandkids now is like, you have to develop skill sets and change with the world. Like, and I think we're all going to be in that position where we have to redefine ourselves, certainly professionally, over and over and over and over again. The pace of change, like Larry talked about the Metcalfe's law, which is the network effect. Well, we have, I'm not sure what the law is when multiple networks intersect and you have, the square of users times the square of users times the square of users. That's kind of what's happening right now so the internet is still in that realm. AI, Bitcoin, like all these things are converging, and I think it creates this exponential thing where those that are nimble, those that are aware will do well, and those that kind of sit back and don't keep learning. Like George and I were talking about AI last night, and even old guys like us are having to bore in and figure this shit out because we'll be left behind. And so stay nimble. I guess that's probably the big thing I would say.
Thanks. Well, we don't have much time left, but I do have one more question. As you guys were talking, Larry, you mentioned this concept of the future and investing and all this stuff. And I'm seeing right now the rise of paper Bitcoin. And it seems like, George and I talked about on the podcast this morning, we're watching custodial exchanges still continue to thrive and many collapsing. We're seeing the stock exchange littered with treasury companies that are just consolidating and tokenizing Bitcoin. Where does this lead? Is this a good spot? Or what's the fix from here to solve the paper Bitcoin problem?
Well, so they paperized the gold market, and it was a different animal because it was physical, and you couldn't verify it very easily. You can verify Bitcoin very easily, and in a correlation to one event, paper Bitcoin by definition involves a counterparty. The only form of pure money the only 2 forms don't involve a counterparty are Bitcoin in self-custody and gold in self-custody. And so, you can play all these paper games until, somebody's arm gets shot off or blown off, and then it's not fun anymore, right? And so, as Caitlin Long says, some GSIB is going to fail because they're going to be on the wrong side of the Bitcoin paper trade. And I think that's possible. And so, it's the paper, by the way, that's creating the rough ride and the ups and downs. And I mean, we should probably be higher right now than we are, but the paper Bitcoin has suppressed us. But guess what? that works in both directions. When the people who are short that paper realize they're in a world of fucking trouble and have to turn around and buy coins that don't exist, that's how you go from 67 to 400, and that's coming. I mean, that move is coming. So,
when? Tell me when.
Sooner than a lot of people think. And I mean, really, the only remaining criticism of Bitcoin as money is its volatility. That's really the only remaining one. And I think it is, generally speaking, going down over time. But, the paper games are going to have to die, and we're going to have to see more and more organizations that are involved in paper coming a cropper, and they will. I think they will. And I don't worry about, Bitcoin becoming gold 2.0 from a paper point of view. I don't think it'll happen. So,
George, Bob, anything to add?
I just want to say, it's true that building derivatives, securitizing Bitcoin, I mean, that is paper Bitcoin, and it's out there, and it is part of the maturation of the asset. The biggest thing that you can do to protect not just yourself, but to actually protect the network is to run a node, couple it with something that allows you, whether it's Sparrow, use something that allows you to be sovereign and take self-custody of your Bitcoin. Get it off of exchanges as much as you can. The only thing that you should strive for is self-custody. And if you do that, that is the best defense that we have against this securitization of Bitcoin.
Well said.
All right. Well, buy Bitcoin and self-custody. Thanks a bunch, gentlemen. Appreciate your time. I'll catch you later.
Thank you, Adam.